very good evening, dear students. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. So today is 31st March 2025 and today we have some very important articles from the Hindu and Indian Express newspapers. So we will be discussing all these important articles in a very detailed manner so that this discussion will be helpful for your exam. And the first topic with which we are going to start this discussion is about the nuclear energy and its prospects in India. And in fact, when we talk about the nuclear energy, so nuclear energy is considered as one of the cleanest form of energy. And in fact, for a country like India, which has been looking for energy security, which has been looking to reduce its dependence on imports from other countries or reduce its import dependency, particularly on fossil fuels, this nuclear energy can be a sustainable alternative. Now we will understand what is a nuclear fuel and how it is going to completely change India's energy profile, particularly ensuring energy security for India. So this particular article has been given in the Indian Express newspaper. So first of all, we'll understand what is a nuclear fuel. So nuclear fuel is actually an energy source, right? An energy that has been released from splitting of two different atoms. So when two different atoms split, then energy will be released, and that is considered as a nuclear energy. So in a very simple terms, this is the definition of a nuclear energy. And you can also see how the nuclear energy, particularly how two atoms split and that releases energy. And what are the key advantages of nuclear energy or nuclear fuel? So we'll try to understand those advantages as well very briefly, and then we will discuss that from India's context in a very detailed manner. So when we talk about the advantages, so it has a set of advantages along with the problems as well. So the first advantage is that it can actually generate a cleanest form of energy or electricity. And in fact, nuclear energy very often comes with a very low fuel cost because it uses uranium-235. And apart from that, the water vapor is the only emission when we produce the nuclear energy, and that is the biggest advantage for a country like India. Because when we burn fossil fuels, those fossil fuels releases the carbon emissions, and carbon emissions are source of global warming. They are source of the climate change. So therefore, when we burn or when we produce electricity or energy from the nuclear power plants, they just release water vapor. They don't release the greenhouse gases. And that is why country like India has been depending on nuclear energy, or we have a larger plans to produce more and more electricity from the nuclear nuclear power plants. However, it also comes with some decent problems, such as it causes thermal pollution of waterways, and it is also difficult to safely dispose the nuclear waste as well. And another major problem is the problem of nuclear accidents that we have seen when it comes to the Fukushima nuclear accident or disaster in Japan, right? And apart from that, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster that we have seen the former Soviet Union, right? So these are very briefly the advantages and the problems, and I hope you have understood what is a nuclear energy. Now, what is this article is all about, and what are the key aspects that this article has been emphasizing upon? So that thing we should understand here. We all knew that India is the fifth largest economy in the world. So we are the fifth largest economy in the world in terms of the GDP. And in terms of the purchasing power parity, India is the third largest economy in the world with around 142 crore population, right? So it is also said that India is also the country with the largest population. So since we have a largest population and our economy is also the fifth largest economy in the world, we need energy, right? And in fact, India's energy needs are also substantially increasing every year. So therefore, the energy demand has been growing and there is a need for energy security for India. However, there are certain disadvantages with the renewable forms of energy, and we can no longer depend on the fossil fuels for energy generation. However, one sustainable alternative here is that dependence on nuclear power. We have just understood that nuclear power is efficient and it also doesn't come with significant emissions, because the only end product or only emission when we burn the nuclear material is water vapor. So that's why it also help India meet its climate obligations. However, in fact, India's total energy demand is expected to triple by 2047. So whatever demand that we have as of now, the current levels, so this demand will triple by 2047. So you can imagine that for any growing economy with a huge population, the energy demand of that particular economy will increase almost like every year. By 2047, it is going to be doubled. So therefore, we need a sustainable alternative to the fossil fuels to meet this particular demand. However, as I have just explained to you that we can no longer depend on fossil fuels for energy generation. So therefore, we need to depend a lot on nuclear power to meet our rising demand. However, it is being said that it is contradictory or paradox in India's energy challenge. So what is that paradox? So one thing that we should understand, that India needs to meet the economic growth requirement. So we need to achieve the rapid economic growth, and that is very, very important for a middle income country or a developing economy like India. So we need to achieve the higher levels of economic growth, and at the same time we should also reduce the emission of the carbon into the atmosphere. However, as of now, more than 50% of India's energy is generated from thermal power plants, which uses coal as a raw material. So when we burn coal, coal releases carbon into the atmosphere, right? So when carbon is in the atmosphere, then that could likely increase the temperatures of the planet Earth, and that could cause the global warming and the climate change. So therefore, on the one hand, we need to achieve the rapid economic growth, and at the same time we need to ensure that the India's emissions are not increased by using fossil fuels. So therefore, this appears contradictory, or this is a paradox. However, here nuclear energy can be considered as one of the most important and most crucial pillar in India's sustainable and self-reliant energy future, because the end product in nuclear power generation is just water vapor alone, and at the same time these nuclear power plants also have a very high efficiency when it comes to the energy generation, and it is also considered as a green fuel, and that's why it is very important for a country like India to depend on nuclear power. However, as of now, if you look at India's total energy mix, so India's nuclear energy, it represents one of the most concentrated forms of power generation, where a small amounts of fuel. So when we talk about the nuclear fuel, or when we talk about the nuclear energy generation, so even if we have a very small amount of fuel, so this very small amount of fuel also can produce enormous or huge quantities of electricity. So with a less fuel, we can actually produce a huge quantities of electricity with a very less carbon emissions or very minimal carbon emissions. So that is one of the biggest advantage with the nuclear fuel. And in fact, France, a developed country, in fact France has been getting 70% of its electricity only from the nuclear power plant, right? So almost like 70% of the energy is from the nuclear power plants alone. So you can imagine how huge the dependence of France on nuclear energy, right? So since it is a green fuel, so on the one hand the nuclear fuel is able to provide or ensure energy security for France, And at the same time, along with ensuring energy security, so the nuclear fuel also able to cut down emissions. So it is also able to cut down the emissions as well. So that is the biggest advantage, and that's where India has been looking to further increase the nuclear energy production. Because if you look at the total energy mix in India, so still we have a very less amount of energy that is produced from the nuclear power plants, right? So on this image you can see here India's nuclear power plants across different places in India, right? For example, the Kodankulam nuclear power plant, Kalpakam nuclear power plant, Tarapur nuclear power plant in Maharashtra, and Kovada nuclear power plant. So it is not yet implemented. So this Kovada nuclear power plant is being set up in cooperation with the US, and Kodankulam in cooperation with Russia, right? So please go through all these different nuclear power plants across different states in India, because this will be very, very important for your prelims examination, right? So apart from that, it is also being said that India has been facing multifaceted challenges. The challenges that India has been facing are multifaceted, because as of now India is heavily dependent on the imported fossil fuels, right? So we have heavily dependent on imported fossil fuels. That means around 85% of our fossil fuel demands are met through the imports only. Don't you think that this is a heavy dependence of any country on the imports of fossil fuels? And in fact, it is a huge strain on the forex reserves of our country, right? So this is a heavy strain on the forex resources of our country and our economy. So therefore it actually increases the vulnerability of our country to the global price fluctuations, because it is being said that the oil prices are very, very volatile in case of any global crisis. So in case of any global crisis, so that could certainly impact the global oil prices, because of limited supply and a huge demand that is existing. So that's where India could become vulnerable to the global price fluctuations. So we should actually reduce our dependence on the fossil fuels, and that is very, very important for any country. And here simultaneously signatory to the international climate agreements. So in fact, one thing that we should understand here is that so India is also signatory to the global climate agreements such as Paris Agreement, and we also have commitments, for example the Panchamrit commitments that are being made by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the Glasgow summit. So all these global climate commitments that we have as a responsible country, so it is very, very important that India should actually reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. We need to reduce the global greenhouse gas emissions, and that is very, very important to further reduce the carbon footprint of our country, right? So don't you think that here one thing that we need to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and we should also reduce the emissions of the greenhouse gases. So in this context, the nuclear fuel can actually play a very, very important role, right? So not just the nuclear fuel, and even renewable energy sources can also play a very, very important role. But the problem with the renewable energy resources is that they are intermittent in nature. So with the renewable sources of energy, we cannot ensure a constant supply of power. We cannot ensure the constant supply of energy, and we may not be able to ensure energy security for India with the dependence on renewable energy alone. So one example I would like to mention you that imagine that the solar power generation. So you would get the maximum output from the solar power projects during the summers, but what about winters, and what about the rainy season, right? So the potential of the solar panels would be at its minimum, right? So you would not be able to generate adequate electricity or adequate energy from the solar power projects or solar panels 24 into 7, because they have a huge seasonal variations, And this is also true for the wind power. This is also true for the wind power. And when we depend on the hydropower, right, so when we depend on the hydropower, we are not sure that the dams or reservoirs would have water throughout the year. So if dams or reservoirs don't have water throughout the year, so it will lead to the lesser energy generation by these hydropower plants, and we can also categorize them as the sources of power with a lot of seasonal variations, and they also have a lot of ecological concerns, right? Because we cannot construct a hydropower project everywhere. Imagine that when we talk about the Western Ghats, so in Western Ghats there are ecologically sensitive areas. So in those ecologically sensitive areas, it is not allowed, it is not permitted to construct the hydropower plants or hydropower projects, right? So this is another disadvantage with the renewable form of energy if we reduce our dependence on the fossil fuels. However, at the heart of India's nuclear energy strategy, so we have a nuclear energy strategy, and this nuclear energy strategy of India has been devised by Homi Bhabha, right? So Homi Bhabha has actually devised a visionary 3-stage nuclear program, and this has actually envisaged the peaceful usage of nuclear technology, right? So a nuclear energy will be used for the peaceful purposes, and that has been envisioned by the scientist Homi Bhabha, and he envisioned a visionary 3-stage nuclear program, And here on this image you can see the stage 1 nuclear program, stage 2 nuclear program, and also the stage 3 nuclear program. So these 3 different stages are different when it comes to the generation of nuclear power. Please go through these 3 stages of nuclear power generation, and that has been envisioned by visionary Homi Bhabha. And in fact, it aims to leverage India's abundant thorium reserves. So in fact, in India we have abundant thorium reserves, and it is being said that in India we have a world largest reserves of thorium, and that thorium can be effectively utilized for the generation of nuclear power, and that is going to benefit India a lot, and that will also help achieve the objective of India becoming net zero by 2070. So we can actually become net zero by 2070 if we are able to utilize the existing thorium reserves along with the 3-staged nuclear power program. And however, so we'll try to understand some basic details with respect to nuclear energy generation in India. So when we talk about the nuclear energy generation in India, so India's nuclear journey began shortly after independence, right? So because we got independence in 1947, and after 1 year Atomic Energy Commission has been established in the year 1948, right? So the Atomic Energy Corporation Commission has been established in 1948, and in 1956 Asia's first research reactor, the name of the reactor is Apsara. So Apsara is Asia's first research reactor, and that was commissioned at the Bhabha Atomic Research Center. So Apsara has been commissioned at Bhabha Atomic Research Center. So these early steps laid the foundation for what would become one of the most comprehensive nuclear program, right? So this is one of the most comprehensive nuclear program in in this region, so I would say that. And in fact, if you look at the statistics of nuclear energy generation in India, so if you carefully observe these statistics of nuclear energy generation, so in fact India's nuclear landscape has actually transformed. So we have actually transformed the nuclear energy generation, because in 2013 and 14, so 10 years before, So India's total nuclear power generation is around 4780 megawatt. Right, so this is where India stands at when it comes to the nuclear energy generation. But after 10 years, we are generating around 8180 megawatts. So almost we have doubled the total energy that is generated from these nuclear power plants. So we have doubled the capacity. Right, so therefore we have as of now 24 operational reactors as of now. And similarly, annual electricity generation from these plants has further increased from 34,228 million units in 2013-14 to 47,971 million units in 23-24. Right, so this is how we have significantly added the capacities. We have significantly added to the existing capacities of nuclear energy generation. And in fact, nuclear power currently contributes approximately 3% of electricity generation. So if you take the total energy basket of India, so around 3% of India's energy is being generated from the nuclear power plants. Right, however, this figure is expected to grow substantially with 21 reactors totaling around 15,300 megawatt in very near future after various stages of implementation. Remember that as of now 8180 megawatt, that is what we have been producing, but this number is going to be increased to 15,300 megawatt in a very near future. Right, so nuclear fuel suppliers. As of now, Kazakhstan and Canada are currently the biggest suppliers of uranium to India. So these are the two countries which are considered as the biggest suppliers of nuclear energy in India. Right, so as of now we have around 24 operational nuclear reactors in India. Right, so Kazakhstan is the biggest supplier of nuclear fuel, followed by Canada, and even Russia has also been supplying nuclear fuel for India. You can go through that particular data. And in fact, as of now, the focus has been shifted from nuclear fuel, but a small modular nuclear fuels. Right, so small modular nuclear reactors. So these are also very important. So as of now, the focus has been shifted from merely expanding capacity to developing indigenous knowledge, indigenous technology about the nuclear energy generation, so that we can actually achieve the self-reliance. Right, so successful commissioning of India's first indigenous 700 megawatt pressurized heavy water reactor at Kakrapar in Gujarat in 23-24 actually marks a significant milestone in India's self-reliance. So that's how we have been focusing on expanding capacity and also focusing on indigenous technologies when it comes to the nuclear power generation. And in fact, a revolutionary development in this regard is the development of small modular reactors and the Bharat small reactors. So you can see here what are the small modular reactors. So small modular reactors are smaller than the traditional nuclear reactors or the conventional nuclear reactors, and they are modular because pre-assembled in factories and then they will be transported to the site for quick installation. So they can be installed at a much quicker pace, and they use nuclear fission to produce energy. Right, so they are called as the small modular nuclear reactors. And in fact, the budget has been allocated around 20,000 crore for these small modular research and development. So therefore, we will be able to develop at least 5 indigenously designed operational small modular reactors by the year 2033. Right, so around 20,000 crore have been allocated for this purpose. And in fact, the Bharat small reactors, so they are essentially 220 megawatt pressurized heavy water reactors with proven safety and performance records, are being upgraded to reduce land requirements, making them suitable for the deployment in near industries as captive power plants to aid decarbonization efforts. So imagine that there is a iron and steel industry, and this iron and steel industry also require energy or electricity. Now why don't we develop this Bharat small reactor very close to this iron and steel factory, so that the needs of this iron and steel factory can be met through these nuclear power plants very close to these industries, and that's why they are being called as captive power plants. They could actually aid in decarbonization because these industries will no longer dependent on energy and that is generated from the fossil fuels. Instead, the nuclear fuel is considered as a clean fuel, and the clean fuel will be used. A clean fuel will be used by these industries, and therefore that will help decarbonize the sectors. And in fact, the government has also set up a target of 100 gigawatt of nuclear power capacity addition by the year 2047, right? So as of now we don't have that much a capacity, so we have a very less capacity of nuclear energy generation, but 100 gigawatt is a huge. But Indian government is committed to achieve this target by the year 2047, and that is a massive increase from existing 8.18 gigawatt. So as of now the total nuclear energy that we have been producing is 8.18 gigawatt, and this number could be further increased to 100 gigawatt by the year 2047. So thereby it will help achieve the nuclear energy mission for Viksit Bharat. And in fact, for Viksit Bharat, the nuclear energy mission has been launched, and that will further enhance the domestic capabilities, that will further augment India's existing energy generation through the renewable sources of energy, and it will reduce India's dependence on import of fossil fuels, and it will also substantially reduce the carbon emissions into the atmosphere, right? So I hope you have understood about this particular nuclear energy prospects in India. So the next very important article is All India Judicial Services. So this All India Judicial Services came to the limelight when the public has been demanding more accountability and transparency from the judiciary because of the recent incident of cash found in Justice Yashwant Verma's residence in Delhi. Justice Yashwant Verma is a judge of the Delhi High Court, and recently bundles of cash set on fire was found in Justice Yashwant Verma's residence, and that's why it has actually ignited the debate that there should be more transparency and accountability from the judiciary. So that is what the public have been demanding. And apart from that, there are also allegations of corruption on judges in the Indian judiciary, and in fact it is very often criticized that the appointment of the judges and the transfer of judges is lacking transparency and accountability, and because of that particular reason the judiciary has been facing various challenges. So what kind of a challenges that judiciary has been facing? For example, the pendency of the cases, judicial vacancies as well, and lack of social representation when it comes to the appointment of judges, and there is a huge delay in disposing of these cases, and allegations of corruption, and also criticizing for lack of accountability and transparency in the appointment and transfer of judges. So because of all these reasons, Indian judiciary has been criticized. And apart from that, experts are also suggesting that there is a need for All India Judicial Services to reform the judiciary. And apart from this particular demand, there is also another suggestion that this collegium system should be reformed, and there is a need to revive the National Judicial Appointments Commission that was struck down by the Supreme Court in 2014, because the Supreme Court has held that it actually violates the independence of the judiciary, right? So National Judicial Appointments Commission was made by the parliament through 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, but that was struck down by the judiciary. Now here we'll understand the issues that arise from the Delhi High Court judge controversy. So what are the major issues that actually emerge from the controversy of Delhi High Court judge Yashwant Verma? So firstly, one thing that we have to understand here, as I have already told you, that the discovery of half-burnt currency notes in Justice Verma's residence, and it has actually raised a lot of suspicions about the corruption within the judiciary and also the financial misconduct of the judges. And one such example that has been given here is that Justice P.D. Dinakaran case. So in this particular case, there were allegations on the judge of land grabbing and also corruption, and that has ultimately led to the resignation of Justice P.D. Dinakaran. And before actually impeaching the judge, so he himself resigned. And we will also understand a similar example as well, where it is being seen as there is lack of transparency, there is a lack of accountability, and there are also allegations of corruption against the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court as well. So in fact, when we talk about the government officers, so there is a need to make a distinction between the government officers and the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court, because whenever any government officer is caught with doing corruption, so they will face a direct investigation. So they will have to face a direct investigation, but this is not the case with the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court. So when it comes to the judges, right, so they will be repatriated to their parent high courts, and this is what happened with Justice Yashwant Verma's case. So earlier Yashwant Verma belonged to the Allahabad High Court. So he was in Allahabad High Court, he was a judge of the Allahabad High Court, and recently he was transferred from the Allahabad High Court to Delhi High Court, and after this incident he was again transferred back to the Allahabad High Court. So this is what happened when a huge amount of half-burned cash was found in Justice Yashwant Verma's residence in Delhi High Court. And one such example is that Justice Soumitra Sen of Calcutta High Court. And in fact, so Justice Soumitra Sen was also impeached for financial misconduct, but only after the prolonged proceedings. So therefore there is a huge delay when it comes to taking action against the judges. So this highlights that there is a huge delay in taking action against the judges, and that could dent the credibility of the judiciary and the trust that the people actually have over the judiciary. Now the other thing is that there is a detailed procedure of impeachment that I have been given here, right? So in this image, so you can clearly see that there is a huge there is a clear and a very detailed impeachment procedure. So please kindly go through this impeachment procedure, because we have already discussed about that and you might have a little idea about the impeachment procedure as well. Now we'll try to discuss about the collegium system and judicial appointments in India. So what exactly is this collegium system and how judicial appointments are being made through the collegium system? And the problem with the collegium system, so in fact, what is a collegium system? So first try to understand the collegium system. So collegium system is actually a forum, and that decides the appointments and transfers of the judges, right? So it is actually a forum, and that ultimately decides the appointment of the judges to the Supreme Court and High Court, and also transfer of judges to the Supreme Court and High Court. And in fact, this collegium comprises of the Chief Justice of India and 4 more Supreme Court judgments. So 1 CJI plus 4 more judges of the Supreme Court, and total 5, and this is the collegium system, right? So this is how the collegium system has been constituted, and in fact it has been born from the 3 judges cases that gave primacy to the Chief Justice of India call on appointment and transfers, and judiciary gets extra or greater say when it comes to the appointment and transfers of the judges, and this has also been criticized for lack of transparency and accountability, and this has also been criticized for promoting nepotism, and also this has been criticized for lack of the social representation of the judges as well. So this is the criticism of the collegium system. So that was born from the 3 judges case of the Supreme Court. So understand that this collegium system is lacking any statutory backing, and it is also lacking the constitutional backing, right? So this is just born out of the 3 judges case of the Supreme Court alone, right? So in fact, ultimately president approves CJI's choice. For example, when it comes to the appointment of judges, or for that matter transfer of judges, so what generally happens is that the collegium system, one CJI, 4 judges of the Supreme Court will decide some names, name 1, name 2 and name 3. So these are 3 judges, and then CJI will recommend these names to the executive, and executive headed by the president will ultimately take a final call about the appointment and transfer of these judges, right? So I hope it is clear about the collegium system. Now, what are the problems with the collegium system? So there are some problems with the collegium system. So one main problem is that it is accused of promoting nepotism and judicial dynasties, because with the collegium system, the existing judges have been promoting the nepotism. Whoever friendly to them and whoever close to them, they are being appointed, and that leads to lack of representation from other different categories, other different communities, and it also leads to neglecting the merit in the judiciary, and that's why judicial inefficiency is existing, and that's why there is a huge pendency of the cases. Now, that is the first thing. And the second thing is that the collegium system is also accused of lack of transparency and accountability as well, because as of now this collegium system functions in a closed door manner, and we don't know what are the terms of reference and how names are being selected. We actually don't know. So all the information is not in the public domain, and that's why the collegium system is very often criticized, as it lacks transparency and it lacks the accountability, and there is no criterion and there is no reason why these names of the judges are selected, right? So when there is an absence of transparency and accountability on the part of the judiciary, of course it would certainly have an impact on the trust that people have on the judiciary. So therefore there is a need to reorient this as well, and there is a need for greater transparency and accountability as well. And similarly, lack of diversity and inclusivity within the judiciary. So when we talk about the lack of diversity and inclusivity within the judiciary, for example, judges from women are very less. Women judges are very less. Judges from the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and other backward classes are very less, and judges from the Muslim community and other religious minorities are also very less in Supreme Court and various high courts. So don't you think that it leads to lack of diversity and inclusivity within the judiciary? A country like India, which is considered as a plural, which is considered as a diverse country, which values the secular beliefs, so there should be adequate inclusivity, and that actually reflects the diversity of this country whenever you are appointing the judges. So this is another major criticism that is leveled against the collegium system and its appointments, and that's where the All India Judicial Services has been coming into the picture, and that's where it is demanded that there should be an All India Judicial Service, and All India Judicial Service would actually address all these crucial problems. Now, what are the advantages of the All India Judicial Service? So with All India Judicial Service, like how we have the All India services such as Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police Service, so they are being considered as the All India services. So in a similar way, if we have an Indian Judicial Service, so that means we have been promoting the merit. So that promotes the merit-based transparent selection process, and it would result in much more efficiency into the judiciary, right? So in fact, the Indian Judicial Service will ensure that the judges are selected through a competitive examination, and it could reduce the nepotism, and it could also increase the inclusivity and diversity when it comes to the appointment of judges, and it could also substantially reduce the chances of favoritism in the judiciary as well. And apart from that, we have just understood that the All India Judicial Service can actually increase the diversity and inclusivity in the judiciary, because judges from different religious minorities, judges from the different regions would be appointed, and it would actually result in greater inclusivity, greater diversity. So in case of judges are not adequately recruited, or existing high courts or the Supreme Courts don't have adequate number of judges from the lower backgrounds, so therefore this merit-based examination will certainly promote the merit through a competitive examination, and it would result in greater inclusivity and diversity as well. And apart from that, there will be a stronger oversight and accountability mechanisms that can be brought in through the All India Judicial Services, because judges who are recruited through this All India Judicial Service, so they could be subjected to periodic performance reviews, disciplinary oversight, as well as ensuring accountability and ethical conduct on the part of the judges. So these are some advantages or the benefits of the All India Judicial Service. And apart from that, you can also go through the other advantages or the need for such an All India Judicial Service. And similarly, these judges are also responsible for conducting the recruitment. So when we talk about the conducting the recruitment process for this Indian Judicial Service, so how can this recruitment process has to be conducted, and how selection criteria has to be set or has to be framed, how syllabus has to be framed, what are the service conditions, and what are the mechanisms for monitoring and evaluation of this All India Judicial Service, and that also comes into the question. So before discussing that, let's try to understand the judicial vacancies that we have. In Supreme Court we have a judicial vacancies, and in high courts also we have a judicial vacancies, and even subordinate courts such as district courts and other subordinate courts. So there is a huge vacancy of the cases, a huge vacancy of the positions of the judges. Similarly, there's a huge backlog as well. So there is a huge backlog of the cases as well. Firstly, one thing that we should understand is that the Union Public Service Commission can be considered as a conducting agency, because as of now the Union Public Service Commission is also conducting the Indian Civil Services examination successfully, right? So it is a transparent body, it is an accountable body, and it has a good track record of conducting the examination, the competitive examinations at the national level. So in a similar way, All India Judicial Services competitive examination can be conducted by the Union Public Service Commission as well, right? So therefore it will result in the greater transparency and accountability and even fairness when it comes to the conducting this examination in a much more transparent manner. And after that, the Supreme Court and High Courts should actually set a selection criteria in consultation with the respective high courts, in consultation with the legal experts, right? Because they can actually frame the eligibility criteria, the syllabus that is needed, and the selection methods to maintain the overall judicial independence. And apart from that, there should be an independent judicial commission, and this independent judicial commission will monitor the appointments regularly, right? So there should be an autonomous body, and this autonomous body should comprise of retired judges, legal scholars, judicial officers, and they could be set up to oversee the appointments and also address the important grievances that are existing when it comes to the All India Judicial Services. So the next topic is the lasting impact of deep sea mining. Now, this article has been given in the the Indian Express newspaper, and we'll understand what exactly is deep sea mining and how deep sea mining has been done, and what are the important minerals for which this deep sea mining has been done, and how deep sea mining will impact the environment. So everything we'll try to understand in a very, very detailed manner. So before going into this, so let's try to understand very briefly some important aspects with respect to the deep sea mining. So deep sea mining through underwater vehicles or underwater robotics. So either underwater robots or underwater vehicles can be used for mining important minerals from the seabed of deep sea. So what exactly is a deep sea? So deep sea is in any area which is beyond 200 meters, right? So this is a region which is a deep 200 meters, and that is considered as a deep sea. So therefore it actually assert exclusive rights to explore the polymetallic nodules. And in fact, in the Indian context, so we have heard about this polymetallic nodules several times. So polymetallic nodules are some important and most essential critical minerals that could be found in the seabed, right? So explore polymetallic nodules from the seabed over 75,000 square kilometers of area in the international waters beyond 200 nautical miles, right? So up to 200 nautical miles, so there will be exclusive economic zone. Countries have the rights to explore resources within the 200 nautical miles, but beyond 200 nautical miles, so it is considered as international waters, and it is part of the global commons. And in fact, the estimated polymetallic nodules resource potential is around 380 million tons, and that is in fact a huge amount of polymetallic nodules. And similarly, development of ocean climate change advisory services with the help of deep ocean mission, and there will be development of technology for the sustainable utilization of the marine bioresources that we have, and it could also have a significant implications on the coastal communities and their livelihoods as well. And these polymetallic nodules actually consist of manganese, so that is in huge quantities, 92.6 metric tons or million tons. So nickel 4.7 million tons, copper 4.3 million tons, and cobalt is 1 million ton. And in fact, other advantages including deep ocean survey and exploration, energy from ocean and offshore based desalination, and krill fishery from the southern ocean. So these are some advantages or the benefits of the deep ocean mission. So firstly, we'll try to understand in a very brief way what is a deep ocean mining, right? So deep sea mining or deep ocean mining. So firstly, why this particular topic we have been discussing, the deep sea mining? So we have been discussing because a recent study has been published in Nature, and this recent study has revealed that the Pacific Ocean seabed, so the Pacific Ocean seabed was mined way back in 1979. So even after 40 years of seabed mining on the Pacific Ocean, it has not yet recovered, and in fact it has a huge long-term impact. So seabed mining is actually having a huge long-term impact. So whenever seabed mining is being done, it actually causes a huge ecological damage or harm to the existing aquatic ecosystem, and that is what has been revealed by the recent study that is published in Nature. And in fact, in this backdrop, there are discussions and there are debates about the UN's International Seabed Authority imposing regulations or completely altogether halting the deep sea mining activities, keeping in mind the huge ecological damage caused by the seabed mining. And what is exactly deep sea mining? So we'll try to understand this as well. So what is a deep sea mining? So when we talk about the deep sea mining, it is actually extraction of mineral rich nodules, sulfides, and other important minerals from the ocean floor beyond 200 meters of depth, and that is what is in a very simple terms defined as deep sea mining. Right, so if we are extracting critical minerals or important minerals from the seabed beyond 200 meters, so that is considered as a deep sea mining. And what are the methods that are being employed for the exploration of the minerals? So there are different methods which are being employed. So one method is using robotic vehicles to collect the polymetallic nodules like plow. And second method is employing the artificial intelligence controlled machines and even vacuum pumps to extract the minerals. And even the processing is done on surface vessels, and waste discharge is often returned to the sea. Right, so when waste discharge is often returned into the sea, don't you think that it could have a huge ecological harm that could be caused? And here a step-by-step guide how the deep sea mining is being done. and what are the important minerals that are being mined. So please kindly go through all these different steps and important minerals that are being mined as part of this purpose. And in fact, what are the important resources that are being targeted? For example, cobalt, nickel, lithium, rare earth metals, gold, copper. So these are some essential minerals that are being targeted through the deep sea mining, because they have a huge commercial value and countries are importing these minerals from other countries. For example, India has been importing most of these minerals from other countries. So why don't we produce these minerals in India itself? So that why don't we extract these minerals from Indian Ocean region itself, so that we could actually reduce our dependence on other countries for the dependence on these minerals. So in fact, when we talk about the distribution of these minerals, so the richest deposits of minerals are located in Clarion-Clipperton zone in the Pacific Ocean, and after that they also found near hydrothermal vents and seamounts as well, right? So Affinity seamount that is found in the Indian Ocean. So therefore these resources found in near seamounts and hydrothermal vents, and they are also have a rich deposits in Clarion-Clipperton zone as well. So what are the benefits of deep sea mining? So deep sea mining actually have the following benefits. So what are those benefits? So the benefits including, so they provide critical minerals, and critical minerals will help surge the global demand for electric vehicles and as well as the green technologies. And in fact, exploration of minerals from deep seas can be considered as an alternative to the land mining, because it avoids deforestation, and it also avoids freshwater contamination of terrestrial mining, and it also ensures the strategic security of the countries, because the demand for cobalt is expected to rise by around 400 to 600% by 2040 due to the clean energy transition and the need for the demand for the electric vehicles as well. And apart from that, there is a high resource concentration, as polymetallic nodules offer rich deposits in compact areas as well. So these are different oceans where the resources or critical mineral resources are actually found. So what are the impacts of deep sea mining? So we'll try to understand the impacts of deep sea mining as well. So it is actually having the following impact. Deep sea mining, without any doubt, it actually causes a lot of ecological damage, because when we mine the resources, we physically disturb the existing ecosystem. We destroy the existing fragile ecosystems. For example, a new study has been recently found that, despite after 44 years Pacific Ocean deep sea mining has been done, and it has a long-term ecological impact on the seabed in the Pacific Ocean. And in fact, it also result in species loss, because many deep sea species are rare and slow reproducing, and they are nodule dependent, and mining will result in the risk of extinction of those important species, because mining would generate a lot of noise, mining would generate a lot of pollutants, a lot of waste. So that would also associated with the species extinction, and it would also result in the food chain disruption as well, right? And in fact, carbon cycle threat would also be another major problem, because disturbance of deep sea life can reduce ocean's carbon absorption capacity, and that would further increase the ocean acidification or global warming and climate change as well. And it would also result in social inequality, because as of now, not every country having the technology to explore the resources from the seabed. So therefore, the developed countries with a huge capital, they can take advantage, or they can take the benefit of exploration of the marine ocean resources as well. So you can also go through the potential effects of deep sea mining on different stakeholders on this image as well. So anyway, that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much for being with us. And if you like our class, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.